comes back to the issue. The system punishes you for doing
success.
well, right? It's an unfair system, and it fails to address that if you rewarded people for doing well rather than punish them, they would be more likely to stay on shore and provide employment to Australian citizens to boost our economy. But they don't get that. They just want to tax the rich. Let's just make the rich pay because that's the socialist thing to do.
It's about buying votes. It's time for the greater wealth. Gentleman bomber, right, who is ready, who's primed, who's got the computer in front of him, therefore he's in charge. Mate, it is great to see you, Derek Whittaker.
It's always good to see you, Aaron.
Always a pleasure, mate. Now, guess what? We've got a foreign correspondent.
Yeah, we do.
Sounds very fancy.
I like it.
Until you meet him. It is great to see you there in Vietnam. Good morning, Travis Carter. I pulled back on that one.
It's one of those things where it's nice from afar, but far from nice.
Exactly, yeah. We're on the same page on this one. Excellent, mate.
The girls have left crack on the couch behind me again. It's all good.
Your laugh is worse than Tucker Carlson's, okay? And that's quite a number. Great to have you there, mate. I'm going to be very interested in your opinions this afternoon as we jump into it. What's up first there, Derek?
Well, we've got some stuff happening on Trump's big, beautiful bill. The Senate has actually passed it 51-49.
Okay.
And that was a last-minute flip from Senator Ron Johnson. He said, yeah, okay. Vance was on the floor getting four of them to get it across the line. Yeah, he was kind of walking back and forth to different desks. It was very interesting to see. What I'd like to do is I'm going to show how this may affect Australians, and particularly Australian stock investors in a minute. But before I do this, the countdown's on, and I want to show you what's actually playing out in Trump's mind. He has delivered a bit of a deadline on Fox News as to how this plays out. You either come to the negotiating table or this happens.
What I want to do is, and what I will do just sometime prior to the 9th, is we'll send a letter to all these countries. There's 200 countries. You can't talk to all of them, no matter how many people you have. You can't talk to all of them. We'll send a letter and we'll say we would consider it a great honor, and this is what you'll have to do to shop in the United States. We're like a department store, to shop in the United States, and you'll pay a 25% tariff, and we wish you a lot of luck. And that's the end of the trade deal, because we have something that nobody has. But if I didn't get elected, I'm telling you, we wouldn't have had a country left. You know that better than anybody. Nobody covers it better than you. If I didn't turn this thing around, this big ship around, we turned it around. Just like those ships coming out of China, they were coming and loaded, and in the middle of the ocean, they were forced to go back because at 145% tariff, Walmart, nobody wanted their product. And that caused a big problem for China. And then I helped China. So by reducing it.
We still don't know. We don't have the clarity on what you're going to do with these expiration of these pauses. July 9?
No, I thought I just said it.
China.
I thought I just said it. You ready?
You're going to send letters.
I'm going to send letters. That's the end of the trade deal. I could send one to Japan. Dear Mr. Japan, here's the story. You're going to pay a 25% tariff on your cars.
Hey, he doesn't mess around. He sends a firmly worded email. I mean, whoa, that's pretty serious stuff. What are your thoughts there, Travis?
Well, 200 nations have already said they want to negotiate with America. Well, there's actually 200 plus, because there's a heap that they've actually already entered into trade agreements and all that sort of stuff. So these are the ones that have who do trade with America, who haven't come in and actually put something forward, say, hey, let's do business, as he says. And because it's gone past the deadline now, he's got more important things to deal with what's going on with Iran, Israel, and all these other different wars around the place. So it's taking up a lot more of his time. He's got to go, right, here's the line in the sand. This is the offer on the table. You like it, great. If you don't like it, go away, go hassle someone else.
Simple as that. Derek, I'm going to figure that your analysis is a little bit more refined.
Well, there's a lot more going on than just exporting and importing here. And I think this is what we've got to consider. And that is that the financial markets do trade with the United States. So your superannuation is actually affected by this bill, if you think about it. Why? Because a lot of the portfolios of superannuation funds are in overseas investments, which equates to the United States Stock Exchange. So the question has become, how is this bill, if and when passed and effective from January 1, 2026, affect Your Superannuation, or any investments for traders who do trade on the US stock market, which is a lot of my students of this sort of thing. Where do they sit? This is really coming under scrutiny, particularly from accountants scratching their heads. These laws under Section 899 of ABABA is allowing the United States to kind of say, listen, we're going to allow you to have so much business increasing from dividends on US stocks. What are they going to pay? And they're estimating it might cost retail investors deemed Australian tax residents somewhere between 15 to 20%.
Okay, it's a big chunk.
Just so people are aware, that's on top of everything that they're already paying, because I can't remember the clause number. I think Derek just did it. Any country that is not in line with the US beliefs on freedom of information, freedom of speech, and all that sort of stuff are going to get nailed with this one. And it looks like Australia is going to be one of those countries as well.
Well, we are one of those countries. Let's face it. We've got Karen here, which a lot's been coming out about her in the last 48 hours as far as her long-term ideology, if you like, and the people she's been associated with. And I don't know if you guys I'm sure you're probably right across it, but yeah, a lot has come about the fact that she's been very much working with the global elites for quite some time. Now that changes we've now got the receipts is what it comes down to. There's no longer conjecture. We actually have evidence of it. Now with that, exactly what we're saying, if we're going to trade with the US, are we on the same ethical standard as what the US wants to go with?
Well, and the question too becomes, will Australian investors also be taxed? Because right now you aren't under a W8 Ben form. If you sign up for an account with a broker or asset manager on an online platform, you have to sign out this form, which is then filed with the IRS. And it also puts into, will there be a withholding tax to increase by 5% annually for Australians? Will there be an Australian double tax agreement with the US? Where does this play in? Okay. Because right now you pay foreign income tax if you are residing in Australia on this. Okay. And it's saying that theoretically, tax rates on dividend income could rise from 15% to 35% over 4 years for Australian retail investors. This is the big alarm that they're going, this may not be so attractive investing. The other side of that, the flip side of that is, of course, Trump has said anyone who invests in the United States will get tax breaks and this sort of stuff. So you wonder, can the superannuation industry negotiate the fact we're actually investing in your stock market and reduce that rate? There is some leverage, I think, there in terms of negotiation.
There's a lot of negotiation that needs
because we're talking a lot of money.
We are. I mean,
not really. When you have a look at the Australian superannuation fund as a whole, it's a drop in the ocean compared to what the New York Stock Exchange deals with on a daily basis. So we're in a giant ocean. So I can't see Australia getting a reduction in the tax rate because we're investing in the US market. Because you got to remember, any income that we're getting, we're actually pulling out of the market back into Australia. So I don't think they'll come to the party on that one. I think Australians need to really wake up to what's going on, because there's only one person that's put us in this position, and it's the Labor government.
I was going to say, what's the answer here?
Yeah, don't vote for Labor. It's pretty simple. Now, if Australians, don't ask me why they do this. They keep voting for Labor. They keeps selling them out to all these different countries and screwing us over. We're one of the most heavily taxed and regulated countries in the world. And there's a reason for that, and that's because people keep voting Labor. So I think this is a great segue, and I didn't think I'd be doing an infomercial so soon, but if you have a look down in the little scroll bar down the bottom, there's an email that pops up every now and then called derek@bluskyfactory.com.au. I have to give credit to Derek for teaching me how to offshore all my assets. And what happens is it becomes all our assets and all our, there it is, bluskyfactory.com. So the Australian government doesn't have access to anything that we do. So me personally, it does not affect me one way, whether you're paying 100% tax in Australia or paying 50% tax. It doesn't worry me because I'm not in their tax system.
Well, you're a non-resident. You qualify as a non-resident. And this is where the big concern is too, is that Australia may be changing the non-resident qualifications in 2026.
Okay.
So that's under scrutiny as well, because expats might be, the way they define whether you actually are a resident comes down to a number of things, like how many bank accounts you hold in Australia, do you own property in Australia, how many relatives do you have here?
No.
all that.
Really?
Well, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
if a guy's over there and his wife's back in Australia,
Okay.
has he really left the country? You know, if his kids are here and his wife's here, all these sort of things. Is he sending money back? You know, all those kind of qualifications come into it.
Sure.
Now, they're saying there is rumours that those laws are going to be changed somewhat, making it harder for people to leave Australia and qualify as non-residents. Those rumours are going around on the social media reels at the moment.
Well, I can understand that because let's face it, and also let's remember that there's the haves and have-nots here. Not everyone in Australia has got the opportunity to either move their finances overseas or themselves overseas, you know. And this is a great opportunity for, in a bad way, for Australia to lose its great business people. It's money.
It's already been doing that.
Well, exactly right.
It's already been doing
what
that.
I'm kind of getting at, this just opens the floodgates in my eyes.
And this is the Band-Aid fix. This proposed legislation to make it harder to become a non-resident. It's just going to push people further away.
That's what I think.
Again, it comes back to the issue. The system punishes you for doing well, right? It's an unfair system, and it fails to address that if you rewarded people for doing well rather than punish them, they would be more likely to stay on shore and provide employment to Australian citizens to boost our economy. But they don't get that. They just want to tax the rich. Let's just make the rich pay because that's the socialist thing to do.
It's about buying votes. Trevor?
They're not taxing the rich, though. So the tax-free thresholds come in for the lower income earners all the way up to the middle income earners. Like you're still getting taxed to high heaven. The only thing is the people at the high levels, and when I say tax, I'm not talking income tax, I'm talking fuel excises, stamp duty on vehicles, your insurances have all these other taxes on it. Whether you're rich or poor, you still have all these things. It's just the rich have more ability to absorb those costs than what the poor do. So when you have these so-called small taxes and we'll reduce the income tax on low income earners, dropping the tax by 50% on someone who earns $100 versus dropping the tax, like let's say you take $100 off someone who only earns $1,000 a week versus dropping the tax for someone who by $100 on someone who earns $10,000 a week. It's chalk and cheese. It doesn't matter. So the people who are bearing the brunt of all these government legislation, like the hidden taxes, are the lower to middle income earners. They're the ones that don't get shafted. The people who are dependent on superannuation for their retirement, give it 5 years, most superannuation accounts don't have over $3 million, so they don't get absolutely slammed. Like it just infuriates me so much that they're pandering to all the lower income earners, but if you actually have a look at it, they're the ones that are getting slammed the most by all these government changes. So again,
they're not pandering at all. What they're doing is literally, they're buying votes, right? And when we keep saying, and I mean, okay, this is not journalism, this is 100% opinion, but Labor is so dangerous for this country. And people keep voting for them because they still have this ridiculous idea that they're voting for the party that looks after the common man. It has never been that party, ever.
Let's talk about
Now, hang on, just quickly before that one, you were saying earlier that only the people the haves and have-nots, only the ones that have something to protect can actually offshore their assets. Well, that's not true. So there's so many ways you can get around these sort of situations. So again, I highly support Trump on this one. He's saying no tax up to $200,000. That's US. So the Australian equivalent would be $300,000 a year. So if you put that into perspective, someone who's working their absolute arse off on the mine sites to support their family, and because of the cost of living and everything like that, they're just passing by. To afford a rental, your family needs about $140,000 a year in rent alone without government subsidies. So those mine site workers that are doing FIFO, they're only home 3 months of the year, they're just getting by. So these tax cuts would mean those people who are working their absolute asses off would then just be doing absolutely amazing. They'd be spending more in the economy. Just the economy as a whole, the flow-on effects, because all those hidden taxes everywhere, the government is still going to be making money, but it's going to make it easier for those families to get ahead and bring their entire family up out of it. So again, how do you get around that if the government does this? You go to bluskyfactory.com.au, you do one of Derek's courses, and you understand what's going on first, and then you can literally tell the government to go F themselves and just do what you want, and you can support your family and do what you need to do. So even if you haven't got a lot of money, there's still courses that will help you to get a lot of money on Blu Sky Factory.
We start a new course tomorrow. If you want to jump on, email me straight away, derek@bluskyfactory.com.au. We've made it really cost effective to get into this. There is a generational shift of wealth happening right now. That window of opportunity is closing quickly. But yeah, it's massive what's going on. The whole system is being flipped. I want to just talk about this for a moment. Penny Wong's off to the US this week,
Lucky us.
with the Quad Nations. So the Quad Nations are made up of course, Australia, India, Japan, and the United States. And what they like to do is they talk about the Indo-Pacific region and how to make that more prosperous. She will be meeting with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and it's the second time this year that the ministers of the US, Australia, Japan, and India have gathered. She is also dealing with a situation, and Australia is dealing with the situation. Donald Trump is pressing Australia and other US allies to hike defence spending to at least 3.5% of GDP. And as the federal government works with Albanese into the same room as the US president, they can't get a meeting with the US president, which just shows you the respect or lack thereof that they have for Albanese, because they won't even return it. Trump won't even get on the phone with him and leaves early at the G7 to go deal with but before the strike on Iran happened, deal with those matters rather than meet with our Prime Minister. So I think that this is really, really fascinating. I think what it's saying to the world, the United States is saying to their allies, you have to become more independent of us. You have to become less reliant for us to rush to your aid if there's a conflict. You need to grow up and spend more. And I think that's budget increase. I think we're about 1.5% of GDP on defence spending at the moment. They want it up to 3.5.
When they were talking about 5% to start with.
And this puts into relation the whole AUKUS arrangement as well, where that's going. Because, of course, you'll remember a few years back, our former Prime Minister flipped on the deal with France with the submarines.
Yes.
And with the Biden administration, we'll get those submarines from there. Is this in doubt? Because the United States is kind of sitting there going, we want to be careful with our assets. And if we are to give them to foreign nations, what does that mean for us? That's 6 less subs that we have in our fleet that we could utilize in any conflict.
To me, there's a balance here, though, of good old-fashioned contra, okay? Now, the fact of the matter is, we have Pine Gap, we have this, that, whatever. Through Australia, we have so many military installations which are US. So, to be frank, I think that there should be some sort of payback. There should be some sort of contra arrangement. The fact is that we do get a degree of protection from the US more than other places, because strategically they need us. Okay, we're right here. We've got that geographic advantage and information that the US need. So to me, I mean, I don't want to rely on anyone, but you've got to be real about this. Looking at the size of our coastline, looking at the size of the fact of the size of the coastline that has no population of any consequence. We can't do this. We simply cannot do this on our own. And I think that maybe the US, and I get it, because I'm on Trump's side on this one. I wouldn't want to be in the same room as Albanese. I wouldn't want to negotiate with someone that weak. I don't like weak men. And I'm quite sure he feels the same way. So, but there needs to be, and I would hope with our next government, there's a better relationship, and hopefully we can balance this out.
You've got to bear in mind how many years we've got before another federal election, right? And Trump's term of 4 years or whatever.
It'll all be up.
I mean, I think we're pardon the pun, but the Trump card might be, as more revelation comes out about the elections of 2020, there may be some wiggle room. Does he do a third term because he actually was stolen election? Where does that go through in the legal process? It's really fascinating how this plays out.
It does.
I personally hope that he doesn't do that, because you're undermining the American Constitution as a whole, which is very clear, only 2 terms. So he has served 2 terms. He served his first term. He missed the second one, and he served this one. I hope that JD Vance will step up, and I hope, because you also got to remember, how old is Trump now?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Age becomes an issue.
Military law is going to be an issue here, though, because, of course, technically the president is the commander-in-chief.
That's right.
So if he argues that he was basically cheated out of that election, was he the commander-in-chief the entire time? This is going to be interesting as far as the law courts are concerned.
Yeah, but again, I mean, I agree wholeheartedly. But big picture, yes, I actually agree with Travis on this one. If he was to basically go against the constitution of the country, I feel that that's going to cause more of a problem long term. I really do. I get it. I totally understand what you're saying, but I think that sometimes you've just got to look at the greater good. And you may have been cheated. Things might have been illegal. All of this sort of thing goes on, but ultimately, what I love about Trump is he is about the greater good of the American public. That is his difference. And to me, this would be a true statesman thing to do, to go, okay, it was stolen, but ultimately, I respect
let it slide. Protect the American Constitution. Now, one thing I do want to say about how useless our president is, a little image here from Senator Alex Antic with his meeting with Trump when Albanese couldn't get one. So
I saw that.
I thought I'd just quickly share this one going on. So we do have a lot of great politicians in Australia. There's a lot. Rannick, unfortunately, is now gone. Obviously, Malcolm Roberts is another great one, but we don't have enough of them. There's too many Australians with their head in the sand still, and I think we need, like America, they needed that 4 years of absolute pain under Biden to actually understand how great of a president Trump is. I hate to say it, I think Australia is in the same boat. I think we need that 4 years of absolute pain and suffering before it gets people to pull their heads out of their backside and start taking an interest in politics. I think the greatest thing that the globalist elite ever achieved in Australia is for Australians to turn around and say, I don't care about politics. Doesn't affect me.
Yeah, okay. But we go back to the early 70s here with the whole Gough Whitlam thing, right? Okay, and the dismissal in 75. Yeah, I don't know. When you really look at, the social change that was caused by that was massive, mate. It was absolutely massive. You know, obviously we know about the dollar being pulled under his watch, so to speak. It was pulled off the standard. We know about the family law court. We know about all of the welfare state introduced.
We understand this. Go down to your local supermarket and pick anyone. Like pick an old duck, pick someone who's in their 40s, pick someone fresh out of university or fresh out of school, and go, hey, who took Australia off the gold standard? Who took America off the gold standard? Who was the last politician to be fired from their position due to corruption?
Well, unless they watched the documentary that was on TV about 25 years ago.
They don't know. They don't understand how much of an impact that politics actually has on their daily lives. If you ask 100 people, I'd say probably 5 would know the answers to those questions. I think probably even less would know who wrecked the family law court, the legislation on that one, and even less would be able to tell you that the family law, when it was actually invented. So this is the sort of things, too many people in Australia just don't care about politics.
It's true. It's true. If you use the term, to anybody who understands politics or has their finger on the pulse, even to a small degree, if you said what's Kerr's Kerr, right, most people would know what what was about. They would understand that was, about the Whitlam government being fired. And we put that in perspective. That was a Labor government that just destroyed this country in so many ways. Certainly socially, financially smashed it to bits, all it going to carry on. And we're 50 years on, and we're still reaping the pain of that. You're right. You're absolutely right, mate. Nobody knows about these things. It's crazy. We fired a government.
Even going down to the level of why do you get paid what you do as a checkout chick? Or, why is the stamp duty on our land rates as high as they are? What's caused that? 100% of it is politics. What gives the local council, not government council, the authority to pretend to be a government body?
That's right. Yeah.
So things like that. What gives you, you want to build a patio in your backyard? Why do you have to jump through all these hurdles to be able to do that? It's your land. You own it. Why does the government still get to dictate to you what you can and can't do in your own backyard?
And the government can say, if they want that land, they can actually just go and get it.
Take it out any time.
And take it from you.
Don't own your property, even though you've paid hundreds and thousands of dollars and you've probably still got a mortgage paying it off. Why do you have no control over your own land?
Rob the next generation. I've seen that happen in my own in-laws.
There you go.
Rob the next generation. There is talk that Eric Trump has his eye on for 2028. That's starting to emerge. So watch that space as that conversation goes, because he's saying, look, it'd be relatively easy to follow up his dad in terms of another election. So that'll be interesting. Meantime, there is a tiff for taff as far as the Federal Reserve is concerned. Now, this is going to be a fascinating debate. Now, I know that sounds really boring.
It's riveting stuff.
We love huge, because they affect, a central bank affects your life in so many ways. If they want you to spend more, what they'll do is lower the interest rate. If they want you to spend less, they will increase the interest rate. And Trump has been really on the case for the Fed to lower the interest rate. Why? Because there are trillions and trillions of dollars in debt. In fact, the defense spending is greater than is less than what they have to pay in interest now, as far as that debt is concerned. So why do they want that? Well, he can nominate who is going to be the chairman for the Fed, and he is not happy with, of course, the current Fed chair, Jerome Powell. He's been on him, cut rates, and Jerome Powell has been saying, well, what if we need it and recession hits, that sort of stuff? He says, then we increase it. That's his thing. We increase it if that's the case, if we get to that place. Now, this is interesting because the Fed is supposed to run independently of the United States government. I'm going to say it again. I think the days of the Fed are numbered. I think it's a body where things are changing very quickly, because you're seeing the Genius Act go through the United States, which is now opening things up to stable coins. And of course, what they think might happen is that crypto companies will be the greatest custodians of US treasuries to back the stable coins that they have. Now, what does that mean? If you have a stable coin that backs dollar for the US dollar, so if I buy a particular stable coin, I've got to back that with, of course, the US Treasury note, the bonds, and this sort of thing. So the whole situation is flipping where, the banks used to be the big possessors of that. Are we going to see crypto companies become that? That's the space that we're watching.
It really is. I mean, that whole space has changed the entire game. No question about that. So you've got Politico on the screen. That always concerns me.
There's a
Derek
report that came out on Thursday night, the 26th of June, that the European Union's leadership had a dinner of dumplings and duck legs and decided to plan how we're going to deal with US Trump's trade war that's going on. And they've decided, well, let's take him on at his own wild game, according to Politico. Of course, as if you haven't heard this, Trump has been negotiating, as we started this episode, with different trade tariffs across the board. And with just 13 days until this imposed deadline to conclude the EU-US deal, European Commissioner President Ursula von der Leyen has decided that, well, why don't we do this? She floated an idea that the EU's 27 countries could join forces with 12 members of the Asian-led Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership Bloc, or CPTPP, which is easy to say, that now includes the UK, to form a new World Trade Initiative.
Oh, here we go.
So the new grouping would design a rules-based global trading order, which they suggest would reform or perhaps replace the now largely defunct World Trade Organization, she says. Crucially, the US would not be automatically invited to that agreement. And so that is what is playing out over dumplings and duck legs, right?
I'm glad they're having a nice meal. I think they're making a meal of it, to be honest with you. This is crazy. You've got all the carry on about, we've had the BRICS nations, obviously, to counteract what was going on in the US, and then the embargoes against Russia and all of these other. I mean, it seems like everyone's just running off and making their own little clique, their own little group. End of the day, here's the reality. Okay, the Americans are the biggest market. You want to be part of that market. You've got to trade with that market. To me, that seems just naive.
Well, there's a little twist. There's a little twist.
Sorry. It's duck legs, all skin and no substance.
You quack us up.
It's over.
Today, here's what's interesting. The Gateway pundit published a story that reveals that Romanian MEP Zsófi Pepera, apologies if I pronounced that wrong, has sparked a political firestorm in Brussels, managed to secure 72 signatures requiring to trigger a no-confidence vote against the left Liberal European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen.
I love it.
Right?
I love it.
The threshold representing the 1/10 of the total 720 seats in the EU Parliament came primarily from the national conservative groups, the European Conservatives and Reformists, ECR, the Patriots, and the Europe of Sovereign Nations. Now, they have backed the motion unanimously, and the ECR's largest delegation, Giorgia Meloni's Fratelli d'Italia, conspiciously abstained, and that surprised the EU from that they didn't vote on this, but this no confidence vote stems from the ongoing fallout of Pfizergate, who deleted private communications with Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla tied to a staggering 21.5 billion euros contract for 1.1 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines, and has fueled accusations of opacity and cronyism. So there you go.
Yeah, they're nice words. It's also called corruption. Jeez.
I've just done a quick Google search. Okay, so I'm looking at one aspect of the US economy, and that's the New York Stock Exchange. So I did this before on foreign exchange currency exchanging. So this is back in 2018. How much money is traded between the US dollar and the Japanese yen per day? So in the stock exchange, currency exchange, $1.3 trillion a day was traded between Japan and America in foreign exchange currency.
In just currency?
So, just currency.
Just that pair?
A single day. Just that one pair each day. So I've just had a look on the New York Stock Exchange, and so this is on.
What year was that, Travis?
That was 2018.
Okay.
So it's getting more. That's when I was doing stock exchange. I'm doing shares now. So NYSE.com reports that the New York Stock Exchange is the single largest liquidity event of the day, and it trades about $18.9 billion per day on average. So they're dealing over $19 billion a day in one event, one part of their economy. Okay, then you've got the international trade, import exports, the internal consumption that they're doing, and everything else that they're dealing around the world and doing everything else. Even if Europe, half of Asia, China, and Russia got together and started making their own little economy things, it wouldn't even scratch the size of the US market. I don't think people actually understand how big of a behemoth the American economy is, if you put it into perspective. So.
Yeah. Certainly since the 50s, and it's quite a while ago, the Americans have led the way in just being consumers. I mean, they consume more than any other nation. They're very much, that's how their entire system seems to be fed. So, yeah, to discount them as a customer is just ludicrous.
You're shooting yourself in the foot. Like, if you've got all this money coming in from a single client and they say something like, I don't know, they called your wife fat or whatever, would you cut your entire income just because of one little slight? It's like it's obviously America didn't call his wife fat, but you know what I'm saying? Like it just does not make sense. And the thing is, these rich elitists that run these countries aren't the ones that are going to suffer. It's going to be the everyday workers. It's going to be the people that pay the taxes and all that sort of stuff. So I'm really, really glad there's been a vote of no confidence again. So you see the same thing happening in Alberta in Canada, where they've in the process of getting enough signatures to leave Canada, become their own country. And it looks like America is actually going to be supporting Alberta in becoming an independent country away from Canada and potentially becoming the 51st state of America. So people are fed up with these global elitists and they want out. So yeah,
Trump said, no more Canada, we're not negotiating anymore. He's had it.
Right. He's had enough of that rubbish. Well, I mean, they've got another leftist lunatic that's in place. When they got rid of Trudeau, they just replaced. I don't understand.
The guy doesn't even feel himself Canadian. He's a triple citizen of other countries.
I want to bring up Damo's point that he's just put here, so I want to get your opinions, gents. How many world leaders have even run a business other than Trump, that is?
That's a great question.
It really
and
is.
It's the question that everybody asks at the barbecue and saying, we need a businessman to run the country, not a politician. And I think
he's absolutely kicking goals.
I don't know the exact stat, Damo, but here's the point. How many career politicians are still in power after 20, 25 years?
Yeah.
And I think that's the issue. I think public service was always meant to be a short-term thing, that you come in, you serve your nation, you get rewarded for it, and then you go back into the private sector or whatever it is you're doing beforehand. What has happened is people get into the public sector and they don't want to leave.
Well, look at Biden. Biden was in the game for over 50 years. Now, if you're practicing for 50 years, clearly you're not very good at it, right? Like, honestly, it meant with him, that is such a long time. So many of them, I mean, we could rattle off a great list, right? Pelosi, all big little list. Yeah, you're absolutely right. To me, public service is something you go in. Look, to me, I'm 8, 12 years tops. Right? Okay, 8 is, I think, absolutely ideal. But yeah, you're right. Like, you've got these kids. They come out of university, right? They go and do politics at university. They're structured. They literally live in the uni flats. They do all that sort of thing. They're completely absorbed by that entire world. They don't have any idea of the real world. They're not paying their own bills. They're not running businesses. All of that, and they become staffers or interns first, and then staffers. What I'm getting at is from the cradle right to the graveyard, they're bloody politicians.
And I think the problem is, and I was having this conversation with a friend on the weekend, if you've been in an employment place for 10 years, you become institutionalized
Yes, you do.
with that organization. So, yeah, this is why they have long service leave in Australia. You go away and you think about your life and where you want to head in the next season.
You don't come back.
And I think, I've done that. I served 14 years in an organization. I knew I stopped growing internally. And I think, this is really important for those you know, watching this is how long have you been at your job? And the issue, and I don't say this to degrade anyone, it's fantastic if you like that long-term security and that sort of thing. I don't know, maybe it's my personality type, but I like to grow. If I stop growing, I get very frustrated. I've got to do something. And I think this is why a lot of people have hobbies outside of their careers. I get it. But professionally, how much are you growing? And that's a different answer for everyone because everyone's in different stages of life. Some people are thinking retirement. Some are just, their career ambitions is just getting going. But it's important as far as the public service is concerned. How long should they stick around?
Oh, they've become that. Go on.
I've just done some quick research on it because there's actually a really good question from Damo. So I thought, you know what, let's check it out and do a quick Google on Quora. So Quora is sort of like a place where people put posts up and they get questions they answered. So this question actually came up back in 2021. A guy by the name of Tony Gilbert, huge amounts of answers and questions and all that sort of stuff. He actually did a breakdown on the number of business people that are actually in the UK business. And now this is only for the House of Commons. So 23% of MPs actually have a business background. But the bit that's alarming is those business backgrounds are things like lawyers, teachers, university lecturers. They're not actual, here's a product, go sell it. They're not like a lawyer is like, yeah, go give some advice and make a heap of money sort of thing. So
it's a briefcase business.
Yeah. So the bit that he come up that was really, really alarming. So that was between 1979 and 2015. Outside of that, the number of MPs that actually had a worker's background dropped 90% of all the MPs. You got to remember, the House of Commons, I think there's 2,000 MPs or something. Like there's an insane amount of people there. So the people who actually have hands-on experience running businesses, like small businesses, contracts and things like that, dropped 90%. So a vast majority of the population has a huge reduction of the representation in the House of Commons. And you can actually see from 2015 to now, the drop in the quality of UK MPs is absolutely phenomenal. The other one there was a 40% drop in number of teachers who become members of parliament. But the number of lawyers and other service-based business owners has actually had an increase. So more lawyers and accountants are ending up as members of parliament, but genuine business people are getting less, and the general everyday workers is massively getting lower amount of representation.
I would add the question, how many of these politicians have gone to the school of WEF, World Economic Forum, ended up in their positions as well? That's a whole different conversation.
Very much. I agreed. I mean, and on the lawyer front, a lot of people don't know how many legal firms are donating to politicians, okay, on both sides. Basically, they fluff the pillows until they get in themselves, and they use it to build their businesses up, and it's just a revolving door of just corruption, as I say, and nepotism. Comment there from Damo: how many public servants get? Oh, just disappeared as I was reading it. There we go.
Get promoted.
How many?
There we go. Get promoted just based on time, not performance. Hey, ain't that the truth? And I want to say this. How do I say this carefully? I'm getting very tired of not politicians, I'm getting yet, people in the public service who, when they get to the end of the financial year, we're getting close to July, right? Very, very close. And then they feel they need to spend as much of the budget as possible because they've got to make sure that next year they get down to 20% on the budget. No, how about you just run efficiently? Why have a fire sale in the last few days of June, right?
There is a lot of that mentality, even in the not-profit sector as well.
Yeah, massively.
if we don't spend it, we will lose it. And it's like, what about how much you actually save and you can invest that?
Imagine that.
Or maybe pay down the debt.
What was that, Travis?
Pay down the debt, maybe.
Just now you're just talking common sense. We can't have that now when we talk about politics. But we've chatted about a lot today. Now, do we have any sort of thoughts to close the show out there?
Wow, we have covered a lot. I think, again, the disruptor Trump has certainly got people hopping around the globe. And I think we've all got to think about how we play this game. Yes, you will be affected by it somehow if your superannuation is invested in the US stock exchange. That's going to play an event, and like you can go, oh well, I won't invest my super in those things. Well, are there as good opportunities outside of the United States as there are there, with trillions of dollars just going in investments in the United States now, especially with the Middle East, who are dripping in money at the moment and forming companies there. So this is going to change the whole finance world in many regards. Are our politicians that we currently have strong enough to negotiate the Trump administration to get more favourable conditions on tariffs and stuff like that? My view is Australia is going to be tariffed at some level, and it's a question of how much. And it really has to consider not just that, but its defence arm moving forward as well. This is the big emphasis that the allies are having to face. You cannot just rely on us to defend your borders anymore. You've got to do better than you've been doing. And how far will Australia go? It's got a fleet that's really aging as far as the Navy is concerned. There's boats, flotillas that need to be replaced there. They're seeing a really bad retention rate of those listed in the Australian Army. They're losing about 10% every year in terms of resignations. People just saying, we've done our term, we're going.
Army, Navy, Air Force, all
the
of
Air
them
Force is probably the strongest of the three.
As far as retention?
And being well equipped as far as equipment is concerned as well. So I think our defences really have to be questioned as well, especially when we've got foreign nations circulating our borders and ships and who knows how many submarines and this sort of thing.
No, you're wrong, mate. Look, when they were just doing that little up and down the coast kind of thing, in Albanese, he was waving. It's very weekend at Bernie's kind of style.
They're looking for a beach.
They were just looking for a beach. Exactly. Looking for a nice place to put the umbrella in, right?
Yeah.
Simple as that. Want to a quick shout out to Worldwide Awake Business Network. I see a comment coming from there. Great conversation, gents. Thank you so much for that. We very much appreciate the opportunity to bring our opinions to you and a bit of information. Mine's very much opinion. This gentleman's got more info behind. That's a bit behind him. But of course, with everything, you've got to, every good thing has to come to an end. So
can I say one more comment?
You most certainly can.
I think if Australia is not growing up, it's now being forced to grow up.
Oh, the big boy pants.
And I think I said this a couple of years ago. We've been in that teenage phase of trying to prove ourselves to the world, and adolescence in terms of our identity. Aren't we great on the sports field? Look how medals we won at the Olympics and this sort of stuff. I think that the geopolitical situations as they are, and of course the emerging technologies are forcing Australia. How much of self-determination do we want? Even if you disagree with some of the conversations that our Prime Minister says in terms of, we're going to do our own policy, not be dictated by others. That's great. However, how much of that can you actually enforce when it comes to defence? And I think that's the one that we've really got to question moving forward.
Everything you just said was absolutely bang on. It was a lot to put on a T-shirt, but I'm telling you right now, that's great information. Too good, unfortunately, because I'm going to have to finish with Mr. Carter here. So we go from brilliance to our foreign correspondent.
So Australia is about 220, 230 years old. So when you think about where we came from, we were a desert. European took a whole heap of convicts and dumped us into Australia. We flourished in some of the harshest conditions in the world. From there, we finally got onto our feet. We became a country in our own right. And then all of a sudden, we had World War I, World War II, the Vietnam War, the war in Korea. There was conflict and hardship constantly. And after all that point, we became the elites of the world when it comes to our soldiers, the hard work. If there was ever a problem, just get an Australian to fix it. Like they don't care, they'll do it. We flourished in times of crisis. And then we hit this big period of peace. And they're saying hard times create great men, and great men create good times, and good times create weak men. I think we're on that cusp now where I love playing the generation card because it's hilarious. The boomers created an amazing time for Australians as a whole. And I think especially my generation, we took it for advantage. We thought, oh, we've got everything on a silver platter. You could be a garbage man and become a filthy millionaire, literally filthy garbage man, millionaire overnight. And if you just saved a bit of money, did your 9 to 5, you'd walk out with multiple houses, $1 million in the bank. It was set. It was easy. It was simple. So I think what's happened is Australians have lost that desire to survive, just to live, because we had to go through all these different hardships. And I think Australians, particularly your own family, I think the men of Australia in particular need to stand up and actually start focusing on their own families, making sure their own families are sorted. Exactly what Trump's done. Trump is sort of like not the state daddy, but he's the US daddy. I can't remember what politician called him daddy just recently. It was like hilarious. Anyway, so the NATO dude or whatever he was. So what's happened is America's gone, you know what? We've got to make sure our own backyard is perfect, and then we can help other people. They've had an internal focus. And I think Australia needs to have an internal focus. We need to focus on the internal family, keeping the core family structures together, and then we can start looking to helping other people. You go have a look at how much billions of dollars we give out each year into foreign aid to countries that have GDP similar or better than ours. Like, it's hilarious, like the level of incompetence that we have. And I think if Australians just learn to look after their own family, protect their own family, and then radiate that into their immediate surrounding communities and taking that further and further, I think Australia will do much, much better than what they're doing now. But at the moment, we can't be looking at our politicians to save us because they're just a bunch of muppets.
What can I say to that? You've nailed it, mate. You've absolutely nailed it. Yeah, look, you know what? Success starts at home, and building strong families is the foundation for building a strong country, a strong world, all of that full stop. So I'm absolutely on.
Aaron, comment of the day.
What is the comment of the day? Hang on, I've just clicked away here to bring this one up.
Love our foreign correspondent.
Oh, dear. Well, I believe that would be Lisa. And Lisa is
I'm blushing.
I think it's worth mentioning that from the World Wide Awake network there, understand this, business network, understand this. Lisa right now is on heavy medication. She's unwell. So that explains her comment, okay? Simple as Oh, dear. And on that bombshell, it is the end of the show. Thank you very much for being part of the Greater Wealth here on Edge Radio Australia.